The desert air was heavy that night, thick with sand and silence, broken only by the occasional rumble of military vehicles and the distant hum of helicopters. I had been deployed for months, and every day felt like an endless loop of duty, exhaustion, and survival. Nights were my only refuge when I could finally sit down in the corner of our cramped barracks, take off my boots and check my inbox for some peace of home. Those emails were my lifeline, short notes from my wife telling me she missed me, or a picture from back home that reminded me of what I was fighting for. It wasn't just communication, it was hope. That evening, after a long patrol under the scorching sun, I dragged myself to the small laptop that barely ran on the sluggish connection we had. The screen flickered to life, slow as always, before finally loading my inbox. I remember leaning back in my chair, expecting to see her usual "I love you, come home safe" message. Instead, there was an email with a subject line that made my stomach twist. "We need to talk." My heart pounded. I opened it, my hands trembling more than they ever had in battle. The words on the screen blurred for a moment before sinking in, each sentence like a dagger. She wrote that she couldn't do this anymore, that she had fallen out of love, and that by the time I returned, she wanted everything finalized. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a chance for me to speak. It was a cold, typed-out declaration that our marriage was over. No phone call, no explanation, just an email while I was thousands of miles away, risking my life. I sat there frozen, staring at the glowing letters, unable to process what I was reading. My chest felt hollow, and the noise of the barracks faded until all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. I thought about all the nights I had laid awake, missing her warmth, clinging to the idea that she was back home waiting for me. All those memories of laughter, promises, and plans we had built together seemed to crumble in an instant. And the cruelest part was that she chose the moment I was most powerless to throw it all away. The rage came slowly, like a storm building on the horizon. I clicked over to our bank account, desperate to anchor myself in something familiar. Maybe even check if she had paid the bills like we planned. But the screen loaded and I blinked in disbelief. The numbers stared back at me, zero balance. Every single dollar gone. Our savings, my paychecks, the money I had been setting aside for us to start a family when I returned it had all vanished. She hadn't just left me. She had gutted me. The room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. I clenched my fists, fighting back the mix of heartbreak and fury swelling inside me. I thought of all the sacrifices I had made, the birthdays I missed, the holidays, the sleepless nights in a war zone because I believed I was protecting a future we were building together. And while I was here, living with one foot in danger every single day, she was dismantling my life piece by piece from the safety of home. Questions spun in my mind. Had she been planning this for months? Was there someone else? Had every "I love you" she sent before been a lie, a mask to cover what she was really doing behind my back? The betrayal burned deeper than any wound I could imagine. I wanted answers, but I was trapped oceans away, with nothing but a flickering laptop screen and a hollow feeling that the woman I thought I knew had turned into a stranger. I read the email again, hoping I had misunderstood, but the words remained merciless. She said she was sorry, but she had to choose herself. She didn't want the burden of waiting for me anymore, didn't want the responsibilities of being tied to someone who might not come home the same. And in her version of freedom, she had also chosen my savings, our money, everything I had earned with sweat and blood. She left me with nothing but emptiness and betrayal, delivered in the most impersonal way possible. Around me, the barracks buzzed with the ordinary rhythm of soldiers talking, laughing and preparing for the next day. None of them knew that in that moment, my world had collapsed. I kept my face blank, swallowing the storm inside me. Out here, you couldn't afford distractions, but how could I ignore this? My marriage wasn't just ending, it had been stolen from me, ripped out in a way that stripped me of my dignity. As the night dragged on, I sat there with my laptop still open, the email burning into my vision. Sleep never came. My heart shifted between sorrow and anger, each wave stronger than the last. I thought of home, of the life I was supposed to return to, and realized it was gone before I even set foot back on American soil. What she didn't know, what she could never have imagined, was that betrayal like this doesn't just destroy, it ignites something far more dangerous inside a man who has nothing left to lose. The next morning, the sun rose over the barren landscape, but it felt different to me. The desert light was blinding, but inside I was darker than I had ever been. Sleep hadn't come. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying the email over and over in my head, feeling the sting of betrayal sink deeper into my bones. Every sound in the barracks, every voice, every laugh felt distant, muted, as though I were underwater. My mind wasn't here anymore. It was back home, trying to piece together the shards of a life I thought I had. When we were dismissed from morning duties, I went back to the laptop, hoping maybe it had all been some cruel mistake, maybe a bad dream. But the inbox didn't lie. The message sat there, cold and unchanging. I clicked again into our joint bank account, praying against logic that the numbers would somehow be different this time. But the screen didn't change. Empty. Not a dime left. It felt like a second punch to the gut, one I wasn't ready for. I scrolled through the transaction history, my heart pounding faster with every line. It wasn't just one transfer. It was several, spread out over days, maybe weeks, draining the account piece by piece until nothing remained. She had planned this. She hadn't acted in a rush of emotion. She had calculated every move, siphoning our money while I was half a world away. The thought made my hands shake with fury. She hadn't even left me scraps. She took everything as though she wanted me to come home not just broken-hearted, but ruined. I stared at the timestamps of those transfers, while I was patrolling dusty roads, carrying the weight of my rifle and the fear of ambushes. She was at a computer moving money that I had bled for. Every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, every scar I carried, it was all turned into her freedom ticket. She didn't just leave me, she wanted me destroyed. I tried to reach her. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I typed out an email, short, frantic, asking what the hell she thought she was doing, begging her to explain. I hit send. The minutes felt like hours, my chest tight with a mix of anger and desperation. Finally, a reply came. It was short, cold, like a knife pressed against my throat. "I'm sorry, but it's already done. Don't make this harder. Move on." No apology for stealing the money. No remorse for the betrayal. Just a flat, detached dismissal. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, had turned into a stranger who didn't care whether I lived or died. The barracks around me blurred. My fellow soldiers oblivious to the storm raging inside me. Out here, everyone had their own demons, their own weight to carry. But mine was different. Mine wasn't a distant memory or a haunting thought. It was fresh, raw, and pulsing in my chest with every beat of my heart. Later that day, I found myself staring out across the endless sand, trying to control the thoughts rushing through me. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, practical, a complete dismantling of my future. She had stolen the security I had fought for, the safety net I thought would carry us into the life we dreamed of. And she had done it while I was powerless, oceans away, unable to fight back. The more I thought about it, the clearer one truth became. She believed she had won. She thought distance would protect her, that her actions would go unanswered, that by the time I returned, I would be too broken, too defeated, to do anything about it. That thought hardened something inside me. She didn't know me. She didn't know what it meant to take everything from a man who had nothing left but his will. That night, while the others laughed over jokes and swapped stories from home, I sat quietly in the corner, my face blank, but my mind ablaze. I started sketching out in my head what needed to be done. I didn't have the details yet, but the seed had been planted. If she wanted to leave me with nothing, she was going to learn what it meant when the man she betrayed decided to take everything back. I closed the laptop, my jaw tight, my heart steadying. She thought she had ended the story with one email, but she had only written the first chapter of something far bigger. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something she could never have predicted. Asterisk, the days that followed felt like walking through fire. Every morning I woke up with the same routine: strap on my gear, follow orders, move through the motions of a soldier's life, but my head wasn't in it. I was present on the battlefield, but absent everywhere else. It was as if two wars were being fought at once, one outside in the dust and heat, and another inside my chest where betrayal gnawed at me without mercy. I kept checking my email, hoping for some crack in her armor, some sign that she regretted what she had done, or even an explanation that could dull the sting. But nothing came. The silence was deafening, louder than any explosion or gunfire I had ever heard. She had cut me off completely, severed not just the bond of husband and wife, but the lifeline that had kept me grounded. While I was out here at night, when the base settled into uneasy quiet, I replayed everything in my mind. Every conversation we had before I deployed, every promise, every smile. I dissected her words, trying to find the lies I had missed, the red flags I had ignored. Had she already been planning this before I left? Was there someone else sharing the bed I had once called mine? The thought made my stomach churn. Betrayal wasn't just about the money or the divorce, it was the realization that love, trust and loyalty had all been illusions. Masks worn by someone I thought I knew. The anger grew sharper each time I imagined her at home, living freely, enjoying the fruits of my labor. I pictured her dining out, buying new clothes, laughing with friends, all with the money I had sweated and bled for. While I lay in a cot halfway around the world, she was probably curled up on a couch that I had paid for, in a house that I had sacrificed for, pretending I didn't exist. That image burrowed itself into me, and every day it festered like an untreated wound. Still, part of me was shattered in ways anger couldn't mask. In quiet moments, when the rage dulled, grief took its place. I thought of the life we had planned, the family, the home, the years we were supposed to spend building something together. Those dreams hadn't just been abandoned. They had been ripped away with cruel precision. She hadn't given me the chance to fight for us, to even understand. She had chosen the most cowardly way to leave, hiding behind an email and a string of bank transfers. But grief is a dangerous thing when it mixes with anger. Together, they hardened into resolve. I stopped being the man who was just hurt, just blindsided. Slowly, I became the man who was calculating, planning, waiting. Out here, survival was second nature. You learned to stay patient, to watch, to move only when the time was right. And if war had taught me anything, it was that revenge wasn't about rushing, it was about precision. I started paying closer attention to the details. I pulled up the transaction logs again and again, studying them, memorizing the dates, the amounts, the accounts she had transferred the money to. I couldn't act on it now, not from this desert, not with the military breathing down my neck. But knowledge was power, and I was building mine one piece at a time. The betrayal had stripped me of almost everything: my marriage, my trust, my financial security, but it had left me one weapon: clarity. She had shown me exactly who she was, and in doing so, she had also shown me exactly how to destroy the person she had become. Every patrol, every mission, I carried that fire with me. I wasn't just fighting the enemy outside anymore. I was preparing for the war that waited for me at home. She thought distance made me weak, that I would be helpless while she rewrote my life in my absence. But she underestimated the kind of man I had become out here, the kind of man forged in hardship, sharpened by betrayal. The desert had a way of stripping everything down to its core. Out here, you learned who you really were when there was nothing left to shield you. And in those long nights, staring up at the endless black sky, I discovered something about myself. I was no longer just a soldier serving a cause. I was a man wronged, and I would not return home empty-handed. The storm inside me wasn't just rage anymore, it was purpose. She had started a fire she couldn't control, and when the time came, I would make sure she felt every ounce of the devastation she had so carelessly dealt me. While my days overseas blended into one another, dust, sweat, and the constant hum of tension, something gnawed at me that I couldn't silence. This wasn't impulsive. She hadn't woken up one morning and decided to walk away. No, this had been orchestrated long before that email landed in my inbox. The more I replayed the sequence of events, the clearer it became. Every missing detail, Every offhand excuse she gave before I deployed. Every half-hearted smile, it all began to form a pattern. I had been too blind to notice. I remembered the way she had acted in the weeks leading up to my deployment. She had been distracted, her phone glued to her hand more than usual. When I asked what was wrong, she brushed me off with, "Just work stuff, don't worry about it." I had believed her. Back then, I thought love meant trust, and I gave her mine completely. But now, through the lens of betrayal, those memories weren't innocent, they were damning. She hadn't been preparing for the loneliness of my absence. She had been preparing her exit. Whenever we spoke on video calls during the early months, she always seemed rushed, her excuses piling up like a wall between us. Sometimes she wouldn't even pick up, claiming she was out with friends or too tired from work. At the time, I swallowed my doubts, convincing myself she just needed space. But now I knew better. She had been laying the groundwork, making sure her life without me was already in motion by the time I left. What made the knife twist deeper was how meticulous she had been. The bank transfers proved it. She hadn't drained the account in one bold move that could raise alarms. She had done it slowly, methodically, little by little, as if she wanted to make sure I wouldn't notice until it was too late. That kind of planning took time. Weeks, months, maybe even longer, which meant that even as she kissed me goodbye at the airport, telling me to come home safe, she already knew she'd be gone before I got back. And then came the rumors. They trickled in through the same network of friends and family I thought would be there for me. It started small, a comment in an email from a buddy back home, a subtle hint that things looked different with her. Another friend mentioned seeing her out, dressed in ways she never used to, smiling and laughing with people I'd never met. Each detail was a blade slicing deeper into the fragile hope that maybe this was just a mistake. Eventually, the whispers became a clearer picture. She wasn't hiding in grief. She wasn't struggling without me, she was thriving. She had taken the money and slipped into a new life as if I had never existed. Expensive dinners, shopping sprees, weekends away. The kind of life we used to dream of building together, except now it wasn't our dream anymore. It was hers alone, funded by my sacrifice. I started to see her actions for what they truly were not. The decision of a woman who felt abandoned, but the cold strategy of someone who wanted out without consequence. She had calculated every move to ensure that when I came back, I would return not to a life waiting for me, but to ruins. She wanted me empty, broken, with nothing to fall back on. It was during those long nights in the barracks, staring at the ceiling while the desert winds howled outside, that I finally understood the depth of her betrayal. This wasn't just a wife leaving her husband. This was treachery, plotted and executed with precision. She had looked me in the eyes, sworn her love, and then plotted behind my back to dismantle me piece by piece, and yet, in that understanding came something unexpected, clarity. She believed she had outsmarted me. That distance and her careful planning had given her the upper hand. But what she hadn't counted on was that betrayal creates focus. Out here, surrounded by danger, I had learned patience, discipline, and how to strike when the time was right. She thought she had left me powerless, but in reality, she had given me the greatest weapon of all, motive. Every letter, every detail I gathered about her new life only fueled the fire inside me. I wasn't just going to come home and confront her. No, that would be too easy, too merciful. I was going to make sure she felt the same helplessness she had forced on me. She had built her escape carefully. But what she didn't know was that I was building something to something far more devastating. The battlefield had hardened me. Her betrayal had sharpened me. And together, they had created a man who wouldn't just take revenge, he would make sure it was something she never saw coming. The silence became its own kind of weapon. After that cold reply, "It's already done. Don't make this harder. Move on." I refused to believe that was the last word. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could reason with her. Maybe shock and anger had made her act this way. And if I could just hear her voice, I could pull her back from the edge. So I tried. God, I tried. The first few emails I sent were desperate. my words stumbling over themselves, begging for an explanation. I asked her why, pleaded for her to tell me if there was someone else, reminded her of everything we had been through together. No response. Days went by and I wrote again, this time more measured, promising we could fix it, that I could come home early, that nothing had to end like this. Still nothing. The silence was louder than any reply could have been. Finally, I broke down and called. The connection overseas was always shaky, but I didn't care if I had to shout through static. I just needed her to pick up. The first time, it rang endlessly before going to voicemail. I left a message, my voice cracking, telling her I loved her, telling her to please call me back. No answer. The next day, I tried again. This time, the line cut straight to voicemail. My messages grew sharper, my voice harder, shifting from confusion to anger. You can't just do this to me. You can't take everything and disappear. At least have the decency to face me. Still nothing. It became clear with each ignored email, each call that went unanswered, that she wasn't going to give me the dignity of closure. She had already erased me from her world. She wasn't avoiding me out of guilt, she was shutting me out with purpose. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was control. It was a way of making sure I had no foothold, no place to stand. And that cut deeper than her words ever could. At night, when the barracks quieted down and the rest of the guys drifted into uneasy sleep, I lay awake with my headphones on, listening to the empty ring of a call that would never connect. Each attempt only twisted the knife further. I began to realize that she wasn't just done with me, she wanted me to feel the weight of abandonment, to drown in it, knowing there was no lifeline coming. It wasn't long before friends back home started to pick up the silence she left. One buddy mentioned that when he ran into her and brought up my name, she brushed it off with a laugh, saying, "Oh, we're not really together anymore," like our marriage had been some casual thing she could discard with a smirk. Another told me that when he tried to ask her about me, she shut it down cold, saying it was none of his business. The walls she was building around herself were tall, and she had no intention of letting me climb them. That coldness hardened something inside me. For weeks, I had cycled through confusion, grief, rage, and back again, clinging to the hope that if she just spoke to me, I could find answers. But her silence gave me a different kind of answer, one more brutal than anything she could have written. She didn't care. Not about me. Not about what she had done. Not about the wreckage she left behind. Her refusal to even acknowledge me was the final proof that the woman I had once loved was gone. But what she didn't understand was that silence doesn't erase guilt. It amplifies it. Every unanswered call became a record in my mind. Every ignored email was fuel. I stopped begging, stopped pleading, stopped asking for explanations. If she wanted to erase me, I would let her think she had succeeded, because while she was ignoring me, building her new life brick by brick, I was learning something crucial: patience. I began saving every scrap of communication or lack thereof. Screenshots of her few cold replies, logs of my unanswered calls, even the timestamps of her refusals to engage. To her, it might have seemed like she was slamming the door in my face, but to me, it was evidence. And evidence was the foundation of what I was quietly building. The battlefield taught me a simple truth. You don't attack in the open when your enemy is fortified. You wait, you watch, you make them believe they're safe, and then, when the time is right, you strike where it hurts the most. She thought silence gave her power, but all it really gave me was time and the determination to ensure that when I finally spoke back, my voice would be impossible to ignore. It started with whispers, a line or two tucked into the end of an email from a friend, a vague message from a family member who didn't want to get too involved, as they put it. At first, I ignored them. Maybe it was pity, maybe it was gossip. But soon the whispers grew louder, clearer, and harder to brush aside. One night, after another failed attempt to sleep, I opened a message from an old buddy back home. He hesitated at first, typing, deleting, then finally sending a blunt line. "Man, I don't know how to tell you this, but she's not exactly mourning. She's out. My chest tightened. I stared at the words until they blurred, hoping I had read them wrong. But there it was, not sad, not struggling. Out. Another friend confirmed it a week later. He wrote that he had seen her at a restaurant, one we used to go to together, dressed to the nines, smiling across the table at someone I didn't know. He didn't say it outright, but I knew what he was implying. She wasn't just dining. She was moving on, and she was doing it with money that should have been ours. My money. More details trickled in over time, each one a stab wound that bled into the next. Shopping sprees at boutiques she used to claim were too expensive. Weekend getaways to places she once said we couldn't afford. New clothes, new jewelry, new everything. And all of it happening while I was sleeping on a cot in the middle of a desert, waking up each day with the weight of a rifle on my shoulder. The hardest blow came from family. My cousin, who had always been blunt, sent me a message that started with, "I think you deserve to know the truth." He didn't sugarcoat it. He said she was living large, that she wasn't hiding it, that she laughed when people asked about me. He even told me she had shown up at a family barbecue, with someone new, her hand resting comfortably in his, as though I had never existed. That image seared into my brain, playing on a loop that no amount of distraction could erase. I tried to push the thoughts away during missions, to focus on the task at hand, but they crept in anyway. I'd be scanning the horizon for threats and suddenly see her in my mind, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, smiling at someone else the way she used to smile at me. Rage would grip my chest so hard I thought it might stop my heart. The betrayal wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the life she was building with it, the life we had once planned together, now stripped of me and repurposed for someone else. Every dollar she spent was a reminder that she wasn't suffering without me. She was flourishing, and that truth cut deeper than anything. But as much as it hurt, those reports also gave me something I hadn't had before: clarity. Until then, part of me had clung to the hope that maybe she was lost, confused, acting out of fear. Maybe there was still a part of her that regretted it. But no, she wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She was deliberate. She was living without shame, flaunting her freedom, flaunting my sacrifice, while I was thousands of miles away with sand in my teeth and blood in my boots. Each story my friends shared became another piece of the puzzle, a puzzle that showed me who she had become: selfish, reckless, unfaithful. She wasn't just leaving me, she was rewriting the narrative, painting herself as the one in control, the one who had moved on while I was left behind. And the more I thought about it, the more one truth became undeniable: she thought she had one. But she hadn't. Not yet. I stopped asking questions. I stopped reaching out to her. It might have looked like I had given up, like I had finally accepted my fate. But in reality, I was listening, collecting. Every detail my friends and family shared went into a mental ledger. Dates, places, people, evidence of the life she had stolen from me. I carried those details the way I carried my gear: heavy, but necessary. Her new lifestyle might have felt untouchable to her. She might have believed distance and silence protected her. But what she didn't know was that every reckless step she took, every dollar she flaunted, was building the case against her. A case I was quietly preparing, piece by piece, while she danced in the illusion of her freedom. The battlefield outside demanded my body, but the battlefield inside demanded my soul. And I swore to myself, under that endless desert sky, that when I returned home, I wouldn't just confront her, I would dismantle everything she thought she had built. Asterisk, when my deployment neared its end, the countdown home was nothing like I had once imagined. Before, I used to dream of stepping off that plane into her arms, of finally sleeping in my own bed, of feeling whole again. Now, all I thought about was the storm waiting for me on the other side. By the time I landed back on US soil, I wasn't a husband returning home, I was a man walking into a battlefield. That had nothing to do with rifles or sand. The first days back were a blur. The world felt too quiet, too normal after months of desert noise and chaos. But beneath the surface of that calm, I carried a mission more personal than any I had endured overseas. Find out how deep her betrayal went, And that's when I realized I needed help, not just emotional support, but legal firepower. I made my way to a lawyer's office, sitting across from a man in a suit who had probably seen hundreds of cases of broken marriages. But when I explained my story, how she divorced me by email, how she cleaned out our joint account while I was deployed, he leaned forward, his calm professionalism shifting into sharp interest. He didn't just see a heartbroken husband. He saw fraud. The lawyer asked for everything I had: bank statements, email copies, even notes from friends and family about her spending. I laid it all out on the desk like evidence in a trial, and he studied it with the precision of a surgeon. The more he pieced it together, the more he nodded, the more a small spark of hope lit inside me. For the first time in months, I wasn't powerless. He explained that what she had done wasn't just cruel, it was potentially criminal. Joint accounts or not, the timing of those transfers, the way she bled the funds systematically while I was deployed, could be construed as financial misconduct. And if she had been funneling money into hidden accounts, or worse, into someone else's pocket, it could open the door to claims of fraud. Hearing those words gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: leverage. She thought she had locked me out, but the law was a door she hadn't considered. If we could prove she had acted in bad faith, siphoning funds without disclosure, hiding assets, or spending recklessly while divorce loomed, I could drag her carefully constructed life into the light. The lawyer's questions dug deeper, and with each answer I gave, a clearer picture formed. He asked about her sudden lifestyle changes, the expensive outings, the new clothes, the possible new man. All of it, he explained, could be traced. Receipts, statements, witnesses. If she had been careless, the trail would reveal itself. And from what I had already learned, she had been more arrogant than careful. I left that office with a new sense of purpose. Betrayal had once left me broken, but now it armed me with clarity. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, she had broken laws, crossed lines she couldn't erase with silence. And with the right proof, I could not only reclaim what she stole, but take everything she had built on top of it. That night, sitting alone in the apartment I was temporarily crashing in, I pulled out my laptop and began organizing everything. Every transaction, every email, every rumor from friends and family went into files, neatly stacked like ammunition waiting for the fight. I wasn't collecting memories anymore, I was collecting weapons. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. Small transfers from our account to another under her name, withdrawals that lined up perfectly with the times friends had spotted her out in luxury. And tucked between the records, something even uglier: payments to accounts I didn't recognize. They weren't hers, which meant someone else was enjoying the spoils of my sacrifice. The thought of another man living off the sweat of my back, dining and traveling with her on my dime, set my blood on fire. But instead of lashing out, I let it sharpen me. If she thought she could hide this, she underestimated the discipline she had taught me through her betrayal. I wasn't going to confront her with anger in my voice. I was going to confront her with evidence in my hand. The lawyer had been clear. The more I documented, the stronger my case. So I became relentless. Every scrap of paper, every unexplained charge, every careless photo friends sent me of her flaunting her new life, it all became part of the arsenal. She thought she had erased me, that she could silence me with a colder mail and a drained account. But in reality, she had left fingerprints everywhere. And the best part? She had no idea. While she was parading her freedom, basking in the glow of her stolen wealth, I was building a case strong enough to shatter it. She thought she had won because I was far away, powerless. But she had forgotten something crucial. Soldiers don't give up when they're outnumbered. We regroup, we strategize, and when the moment comes, we strike with precision. The war at home had only just begun, and for the first time since opening that devastating email overseas, I felt something dangerous flicker to life inside me: anticipation. The more I uncovered, the more certain I became this wasn't just betrayal, it was theft, deception, and arrogance bound together in a neat little package she thought would never unravel. She had underestimated me, underestimated the strength that comes not from love but from loss. And as I gathered every shred of proof, as I built my case piece by piece, I realized that I wasn't just preparing to take back what she stole, I was preparing to end the story. On my terms, I kept my silence just as she had. No angry confrontations. No warnings. I didn't storm into her new life demanding answers. I let her believe I had vanished, broken and forgotten, licking my wounds somewhere far away. It was the same silence she had weaponized against me, but now it was mine. My silence wasn't weakness, it was the calm before a storm she couldn't see coming. I collected everything. Bank statements that showed the steady bleeding of our account. Records of withdrawals that matched the nights she flaunted her new lifestyle. Payments made to accounts she never told me about. Screenshots of her social media posts, where she couldn't resist showing off the glitter of her new life. Friends' testimonies, family whispers. Every careless mistake she had made while thinking she was untouchable. It all became ammunition stacked in my favor. And when the moment came, when the files were thick enough, when the evidence was irrefutable, I finally let the silence break. The confrontation wasn't in a screaming match or a desperate plea, it was in the cold, unshakable setting of a courtroom. She walked in with her new life written all over her, designer clothes, smug confidence, and the kind of arrogance that only comes when someone believes they've already won. She looked at me like I was the ghost of a past she had buried. But ghosts have a way of haunting. My lawyer laid out everything, piece by piece, like a chess game she didn't know she was playing. The bank transfers, the hidden accounts, the lavish spending that didn't line up with her claims. The silence she had used against me was now painted as deliberate evasion, a refusal to cooperate, a sign of bad faith. With each revelation, her face shifted, confidence cracking, arrogance melting into panic. And I sat there, calm, steady, watching her unravel in the very place she thought she held control. For months, I had been the one broken by silence, by betrayal, by loss. But in that moment, I held every card. The woman who had erased me, who had stolen from me, who had thought distance and silence made her safe, was now cornered, exposed, powerless. The judgment came down not just in my favor, but with weight. Assets frozen, money traced, accounts divided in ways that stripped her of the empire she thought she had built. And in the end, the life she had paraded so boldly wasn't just questioned, it was dismantled. Walking out of that courtroom, I didn't feel the triumph of victory, not in the way people imagine revenge to feel. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't clean. It was heavy, raw, the taste of justice cut with the bitterness of what I had lost. But it was mine. It was closure, not given but taken. She had tried to erase me with an email. She had tried to leave me with nothing. But in the end, I walked away not just with proof, not just with my finances restored, but with something far more valuable, the knowledge that she could never touch me again. And as I stepped into the daylight, free at last from the shadow of her betrayal, I realized something she never would. She had taken my past, but I had claimed my future. And that, more than anything, was the revenge she could never undo.